Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenow, and we are back here in the Hendrickson Library at the Institute for the Preservation of Western Civilization. John Hendrickson and myself back here for a new year and back behind the microphone. John, I accidentally pressed stop on the record instead of stop on the intro music. Are we going to roll with it?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah,
Are you ready to go?
I am. Yeah.
That's what happens when you take at least 2 weeks off in between episodes. But we've got we're back at it, and we're gonna thrill and excite today for sure. Are you ready for session? I
am.
Well, good. I don't know that I am, to be honest with you, because I still every year's got its own. It's unique. The legislature's a little bit different every year, and I'm not quite sure what to expect. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit today. Maybe take a look at certainly what tax issues to expect, but maybe just some of the other issues we might be looking at. I want to take a look at a few of who the players are this year. Who should we be looking at as the important voices on these issues that Iowans are going to be paying attention to, specifically, again, on tax issues, and, a few other maybe fun things along the way. We've got some housekeeping things that we need to take care of first, and I know that our listeners often really don't care about what's happening in other states besides Iowa, but have you you spent some time up in the Great North over Christmas and New Year.
Yes.
What in the world is happening with the balance of power in the Minnesota legislature right now? Because it is. I have my political friends all texting me about this. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'll ask John.
Well, it's very interesting because it's a tie in the House, and there's the DFL I think has a slim majority in the Senate, and there's I believe one or two special elections that are going to be held within the next month or so, I think.
Well, I mean, and there's these vacancies. I mean, we got it all. Mm-hmm. We've got felony charges. We've got resignation.
Yes, yeah.
Potentially stolen elections of races being decided by 2 or 3 votes, but yet went ahead and threw away 20. Mm-hmm. That was just a kind of a new wrinkle. Usually they go find new ballots.
Yeah.
This time they're actually just throwing away ones they don't like. So I don't know. I guess whatever it takes, the ends justify the means for some folks in politics. But I saw also today that the DFL House members are threatening to just leave because somehow or other it's going to be Republicans that are going to be electing a speaker because they've got this 1 vote margin, and so they're just going to take their ball and go home. I don't know. Yeah. That's a bad look, I think, when you're not there just actually doing the job.
Yeah.
But I don't know all the ins and outs of it.
Go ahead. Well, the other thing, too, is that, everyone touts, as sort of being the gold standard for progressive policies, but they're, everyone, our liberal media was crying because of when the December REC met, they were saying how our revenues were bad, which they weren't.
No, not at all. We talked about that last time.
But Minnesota, their budget forecast, they're facing a $5 billion deficit.
So you mean to tell me that there are economic forces larger than the administration of Iowa?
Yeah.
And that actually, when you spend more than you have, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I got to say it because we said it before, revenues are still stronger than we expected when we passed these tax bills. The long-term projections still show positive, that tax collections are going to outpace expenditures. And so you've got to understand that when you hear the critics talking about mismanagement of the budget and that things are going to cost more, nobody's making those criticisms about them on the left in Minnesota when they cannot pay the bills.
Yeah.
But yet Iowa cuts taxes, still balances the budget, and still does universal school choice, and still makes it all work.
Yeah. And this is after spending an $18 billion surplus and raising a bunch of taxes.
Yeah.
They're still in, a fiscal mess.
Yeah. Okay, so enough about Minnesota. It's crazy. We're going to be watching that. And I think the reason it's interesting to me is that Long gone are the days in Iowa of slim majorities and fighting for who controls the chamber. I mean, you've got a 67-33 House majority. You got 35-15 in the Senate, although it's 34-15 right now with the vacancy because of Senator Knoyer now becoming Lieutenant Governor Knoyer. I think most believe that will be a hold for Republicans in the Senate. But those are huge margins, and those majorities have been secure for several cycles now, and it's largely business as usual of just moving in and going on. The leadership is stayed the same for several cycles now, so boring is sometimes good, which is sometimes we like that. We still want to get good things done.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade us for Minnesota.
No, not at all.
Okay, but what I do want to do is get your take real quick before we get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on in Iowa. Let's cast our eyes a little bit further north from Minnesota, John. Yeah. So if you got to pick, which would you rather have, Canada or Greenland?
I would say Canada, only because the fishing is much better.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Well, you've never fished Greenland, though. You can't say that.
That's true, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I've always had a special place in my heart for Canada. So
I think he's serious about Greenland. Obviously, the whole Canada thing is just trolling the left up there, and it's working brilliantly.
It is, yeah.
Because Justin Trudeau has announced he's stepping down.
That's right, yeah.
Or Governor Trudeau or whatever he is.
Yeah.
But I just think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And maybe we're making a move on Panama, too. I don't know, but I'm here for it. Manifest Destiny and Monroe Doctrine and all those fun things, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add on all that? Are you here for Empire America?
Well, not empire, but I am in favor of American interests, but not empire.
Okay, I don't know.
But
what are they going to do? Let's just Anyway, that's I definitely. I mean, in all seriousness, the Panama Canal thing is serious. I don't think anybody's talking about sending in troops. Although our guns are bigger than theirs, so we can do whatever we want. But that was an American construction project that we gifted them, and now they're turning around and giving it away to the Chinese. Which
we were talking in pre-production this morning, but this was something Ronald Reagan warned about before he was even president, when he famously debated William F. Buckley on this issue and challenged Buckley on this.
Right, and it's part of the Jimmy Carter legacy of giving this away as well.
Absolutely.
So I mean, the Panama Canal thing is real. And I think we should be serious about the Greenland thing.
Yeah.
It is especially important for, I think, two reasons. One is the natural resources, rare earth minerals, and all those things that are in Greenland. We already have a significant military presence there. And secondly is shipping routes through the Arctic Circle are becoming much more important in that geopolitical significance. If you look at the globe from the top, you can see how it's the U.S. and Canada and Russia and Scandinavia and Greenland. I mean, those things are all right there.
Yes,
so you can really see how those things matter, and there really is a national security aspect of that. So I'm all here for the Greenland thing, and then the Canada stuff is just fun.
Yeah.
All right. Good. That's all right. That's the foreign affairs segment of the show for today. I do want to talk a little bit about thematically what to expect out of the legislature this year. And we're going to come back around later this week into specifically what folks are saying on property taxes, because there is some interesting things there. But would it be fair to say from your read, you spend more time reading the media accounts than I do, John, that property taxes are the number one issue this year?
I would say yes. Yeah, that is what most of the news accounts that have come out have said in terms of legislative priorities.
And I think it's part of my not quite understanding the vibe for this session this year is I agree. I think that's right. I think it's at least what's being talked about the most. And it should be, because I think it was the biggest issue that came out of the election. And if you talk to a candidate that knocked a lot of doors in a swing district, they're going to tell you they heard a lot about property taxes. But there's really not a plan out there.
No.
We've been very clear. We think spending limitations are in order, specifically a 2% hard cap on expenditures. but nobody else is really talking about much.
No.
I know that Senator Dawson has concepts in mind that when he did his first bill, that there were phases to this. And so I'm sure he has in mind of where he'd like to go, but it hasn't been something that's necessarily been given out for public, fodder like that. But, I think, you were talking about an article in the Gazette that was yesterday or today that went through all these statements. I want to parse it out later this week, but several leaders are making really strong statements about property taxes. They want to do something bold. My fear is that they're still trying to figure out the way to do something bold without making local governments mad. Mm. And I just don't see where that's possible.
I think you're right on that.
Sure, a noble effort to try and make everyone happy.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be an option available to them this year. It will either be you're going to have to tell them no and take the credit cards away, or it's going to be a very tepid bill. Mm-hmm. One or the other. So we will see.
Yeah.
But I think it's a little that there's this major issue, but yet not a lot of ideas out there. So that's something to watch. What else are you seeing discussed in the media or seeing legislators talk about that you think will be a key issue this year?
Well, obviously, education is always going to be there. Education funding is always talked about. I think another big issue that will be debated will be work requirements for Medicaid is another one, especially with the incoming Trump administration, because that has a federal angle to it, and that you've seen a lot of discussion of that as a potential issue. The issue of cell phone use in schools is another issue that's been getting traction in the media. Those are some of the big ones that I've seen.
Do we expect additional fights over the carbon pipeline? Have you seen a lot about that?
I think that will. I think so, but it's been quiet.
I think a lot of it is at sort of the administrative level with the utilities board and seeing what's happening around there. We haven't really followed that issue very much, but it has definitely dictated the mood in the Capitol for the last couple of years. So certainly something to be mindful of. I think the other one is some of the efforts to push back against the radical social agenda on, the gender issues, and it was content in the schools, or I think you're going to see additional big pushes on that. I think we talked about this the other day, John, but it was actually a Democrat kind of review of election data by a major liberal Democrat polling firm. And their takeaway is that it was these issues, these social issues of gender, call it whatever you want, that actually dictated swing voter preferences more than economics.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then that has to be a big takeaway for conservatives heading into the next Congress or the next Iowa General Assembly, is that folks want to see an end to a lot of that stuff. So I expect it. And over the look, both House and Senate Republicans have led on these issues, but I think House Republicans have really thrown a lot of ideas out there over the last year or two, and I would expect to see them continue to lead on that going into this year. Did you have another?
I think I don't. This might be a prediction, but I think a sleeper issue that might come up, not the most exciting, but it could be a bigger issue, is a push for sort of reforming and maybe redesigning some of the tax credit programs.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a push this year for that.
Well, I mean, maybe sometimes we don't get too specific on these, but I think that the research activities credit specifically John Deere is going to be talked about this year. John Deere has laid off a lot of folks this year, shifted a lot of jobs to Mexico this year. And I know for a fact that there are several legislators that want to pull back on some of the refundable tax credits that we give them ostensibly for job growth in the state of Iowa. So that's one to look at, I think, and that could be the catalyst to other changes inside of tax credits. I think that's a good call as well. I saw a quote the other day that I've seen it many times before, John, but I'm thinking ahead about the session. We talked about kind of what the vibe is. Obviously, we want to see work on property taxes, and we want to see a few other things, but there isn't a lengthy agenda of conservative reform items like there has been in previous years. And it almost feels like we're shifting more towards kind of the ongoing stewardship of a conservative state and making smaller adjustments. And I've struggled with how to message this, and I've had some listeners that have correctly called me out on it. We still should expect big things. Look, we are asking for big things on property taxes. Yeah. They are in order. Some of the other reforms won't be front page of the paper. They're important, but they won't, a change to the property tax notification statements might not get front page news. It's important, but it's not the same as doing voter ID or universal school choice or collective bargaining. It doesn't make it it's important, but it just doesn't measure up the same way. So I think we got to work on those things. Maybe the more the blocking and tackling. Am I off base here, John?
No. And I would say two other issues that I think are very important in terms of protecting and sort of continuing this conservative policy legacy would be those two taxpayer protection amendments that I think are very crucial and need more discussion. And that's the 2/3 majority requirement to pass an income tax increase by the legislature, and then constitutionally protecting the flat tax. And I think those are very important protections that the legislature needs to continue to push forward. And I think there's some additional things too that they could do, even on the local government front. And I know, for example, last year we talked a lot about they did the preventing the oh hell, man, I'm drawing a blank. What was the ban on, writing the checks to people? I'm drawing.
Oh, the universal basic income.
Universal
that was
income.
wonderful. That was maybe my one of my favorite bills the last few years.
I think another good reform for local government would be to, and I think there was a bill, but it didn't get passed, would be to prohibit ranked choice voting at the local level in Iowa. And I think. And then another good provision would be to ensure, Iowa always, participates in the Electoral College, and because there's a lot of states that when you see when Democrats get the majority, they're joining the National Popular Vote Compact, which is a dangerous idea.
And I think you can talk about those kind of in the same thing. We've started talking about some federalism issues and things that we can do here at the state level to sort of preserve Iowa's authority to make decisions, to cut strings that may be attached from the federal government. But it's all about the importance of the state of Iowa in this thing. And so it can be larger thematic in just the nature of the fabric of the republic, like the Electoral College, or the way we actually conduct elections, like ranked choice voting. And it come down to some of the more nitty gritty things about maintenance of efforts and strings attached to federal funds. And so I think that's a great point, John, is trying to find a way to continue to stand strong in the face of federal government overreach. And I naively believe perhaps that there will be new opportunities in that in a new Trump administration, but the the federal government seems to be always wanting to find, no matter who's in charge out there, find ways to grow its own authority. But you're right. Those are good issues that we should look at. Yeah, I don't know about the amendments. I have heard. I guess I tend to think those will probably happen next year, but if there's an opportunity, I'd like to see them go ahead and get those done this year. Strike while the iron's hot. They're a good idea now. They're going to be a good idea later, and and if they have the capacity this year, get them done, and it frees things up for what we're working on next year. But I mentioned that I found a quote that I like that I think is going to inform us more and more going forward, which is Calvin Coolidge. Do you know where I'm going? Is famously said, it's much more important to kill bad bills than to pass good ones.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Obviously, that is universally true. There will be obviously bills that we need to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't the right thing. One that we've talked about, it's not necessarily a bill, but the idea, we mentioned it already in this episode, is that the idea that state taxpayers should pick up the tab for property tax relief, is that we should use state dollars to sort of buy down some of this. That's a bad idea.
Yes.
And we'll fight back against that.
Yeah.
We will kill that bad idea.
Yeah.
And there'll be individual bills along the way. But that's an important thing. I think we still have a lot of good stuff we can do, and we'll work on that. But yeah, I want to plant that seed with our listeners here, is that we're going to be talking about Calvin Coolidge, a little bit more than even we have in the past, John. So I thought you might.
And that's an important point.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. We're going to come back. Like I said, I want to talk a little bit maybe next time around, or sometime between now and when session starts, about who the players are. Obviously, you can speaker, leader, majority leader, president. I mean, we know those folks. It's Speaker Grassley, Leader Whitver, President Sinclair, Majority Leader Winchell. They're all in place. They've been in place for a while. But there's new people in new spots in some of these issues that'll matter to us, and some people that maybe don't even have that leadership title that are really getting in the mix. And so we'll talk about that a little bit next time, and what they're actually saying, and what conclusions we can draw off all that. What the preview answer is to that? Not very much.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, but all right. Anything else for us today, John?
No, I think that'll be interesting to go over that.
Well, good. Well, I didn't want to try and do too much, because we've had a little bit of a hiatus, and as you're getting back into shape, I didn't want us to pull a hamstring or something trying to go in for one of our 30 or 40 minute episodes.
That's right,
so we're gonna ease into it, but we're gonna try and get a lot more content out as we move into session and rolling through session, just to try and my goal is not even to just regurgitate the news, but to try and give some sort of insight as to the how and the why, the way the building is working. And some of those moving parts on the inside are a little bit opaque if you're not used to it. So, and I know we've got plenty of legislators and insiders that do listen, and they'll find that part boring, or they'll tell me I'm wrong, which is both of those things are absolutely going to be true. But I know we got a lot of folks too that aren't as used to the system as you and I are. So with that all having been said, that's all the time we have for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. Don't forget to have a happy new year. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.